A Canadian family walks up to the American border, just like they have done many times before. They have their passports ready and are excited for a winter trip to Florida. But this time, things do not go how they expect. Instead of being waved through, they get pulled aside for extra questions. Hours pass, and the family is split up. Their phones are taken away, and they are placed in a cold holding room with no clear reason. Days turn into weeks, and their 2-year-old child, who by US law should not be held for more than 20 days, ends up detained for 51 days, more than double the legal limit. This really happened to a Canadian toddler, and it is part of a much bigger pattern facing Canadians at the American border right now in December 2025. New data released on December 18, 2025, shows a sharp rise in Canadians being detained by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement known as ICE. Over 200 Canadians have been detained by ICE since January 2025, which is a huge jump from about 137 in all of 2024. Most of these people had no serious criminal record. Analysis of 434 Canadian detention stays between September 2023 and mid-October 2025 found that only 2 involved major felony convictions and 6 involved minor offenses. That means hundreds of Canadians with clean records were still locked up. Among the more than 200 Canadians detained since January were at least 6 children with birth years between 2009 and 2024, so some were teens and 1 was a baby. Several of these kids were held at the South Texas Family Residential Center, a place that has been criticized for poor medical care, bad water, and weak access to legal help. One 3-year-old child was kept in a holding room for 4 days, even though those rooms are meant only for detentions under 12 hours. A 13-year-old Canadian child, held for weeks, wrote, "I do not want to die here" in written testimony. The most shocking case is the 2-year-old Canadian toddler, held for 51 days, even though a long-standing court agreement that protects children in custody sets a 20-day limit. Families back in Canada say they are often kept in the dark. Parents from cities like Mississauga and Montreal have told reporters they cannot get clear answers from U.S. officials about where their loved ones are or how long they will be held. On mid-October 2025, at least 56 Canadians were in ICE detention facilities. Some are in places like the Chrome facility in Florida, which human rights groups say has overcrowding, poor medical care, limited access to lawyers, and worrying use of solitary confinement. One Canadian named Chris Boyd described his experience at the Windsor-Detroit crossing. He said U.S. border officials suddenly gave him 2 choices: either be arrested and sent to a detention facility, and then see a judge, or go back to Canada. When he asked why he was not being allowed in, they told him they did not have to explain. Before sending him back, they still took his photo and swabbed his mouth for DNA. Boyd has no idea why he was treated like a criminal, and he chose return to Canada because detention without knowing the reason felt too risky. Border officers have started using mouth swabs to collect DNA far more often in recent years. Some legal experts in the US say this might be unconstitutional in certain cases, especially when used on US citizens. For Canadians, this type of biometric collection is becoming part of normal border checks, even when the traveler has no obvious issues with their record or travel plans. All of this is happening just as a major rule change is about to hit Canadians at the border. On December 26, 2025, the United States is rolling out a fully expanded biometric entry-exit system at its borders. Before now, many travelers, especially Canadians, were partly or fully exempt from certain biometric checks. That helped keep the border fast and friendly. But starting December 26th, most of those exemptions disappear. Fingerprints and photos will be taken for almost everyone entering or leaving the US. The rule allows biometrics to be collected, not just at airports, but also at land crossings, seaports, and even for travelers in private vehicles, boats, or small planes. This matters a lot for Canadian snowbirds. Every winter, more than 1 million Canadians travel to the United States for long stays in warmer states like Florida and Arizona. Many of them are retirees who own winter homes there and stay for months. For years, crossing the border was quick and simple for them. Now, 2 major changes make things more risky and confusing. The first is this biometric system starting December 26th. The second is a new US registration rule for longer visits that already started earlier in 2025. Under the new registration rule, any Canadian who stays in the United States for more than 30 days must register online with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, called USCIS. This has to be done after entering the U.S., but before the 30th day is up, and it is required for every trip over 30 days, not just once. The policy grows out of a Trump administration order linked to border security and so-called invasion concerns. To register a traveler must create an online account and file a form known as Form G325R, which collects personal details and is tied to biometric records like fingerprints. The penalties for not registering on time are serious. A Canadian who misses this step can face fines up to $5,000 possible jail time and future denial of entry to the US. Immigration lawyers warn that this creates a legal trap for many snowbirds who enter by car and think they are following the rules. The U.S. Embassy in Canada explains that the registration requirement applies to any stay of 30 days or more, counting from the most recent entry. It also says that even Canadians who did not receive a Form 194 entry document at the border must register if they are in the country for 30 days or longer. The problem is that land border officers do not always issue Form Y-94s in a consistent way. Some Canadians are being told they must get an I-94 for a 30-day or longer stay and pay a $30 fee at the border while giving fingerprints and having their photo taken. Others cross at different points and are not told anything. Because of this uneven enforcement, many snowbirds assume nothing special is required. They then stay for more than 30 days without registering online. When they eventually learn about the rule, they may already be in violation and at risk of fines or worse. This is why legal experts say the rule is creating a silent legal trap for Canadians who have traveled to the US hassle-free for years and are not used to checking for new forms and digital rules. Lawyers in Canada now warn that some normal parts of a Canadian life can look like red flags under the new border climate. Having an American spouse or close American family members can make US border officials think a Canadian might be trying to move to the US without the right visa. One immigration lawyer, Ksenia Chern-McCallum, said that Canadians should always have a booked return flight or clear proof of when and how they will leave the US. Without that, the risk of being stopped or refused goes up sharply. Past overstays, even by mistake, can also show up in the system and trigger extra questions or denial of entry. In 2025, the Trump administration has reshaped border and immigration policy through multiple executive orders. One key order, called Guaranteeing the State's Protection from Invasion, directs officials to suspend entry of certain groups, claims to close loopholes in asylum, and to require detailed medical and criminal background information from those seeking to enter. If someone cannot provide this information, they can be denied entry. The same order authorizes broader use of the military, including National Guard units to assist at the border, and transfers a wide strip of land along the U.S.-Mexico border to the Defense Department as a national defense area. This order focuses on the southern border, but the tougher stance on migration affects the whole system, including how northern border officers view Canadian travelers. Data from U.S. agencies show that total encounters on the southern border dropped from about 189,000 tollers in March 2024 to close to 11,000 tollers in March 2025 after Trump returned to office and began these policies. This sharp drop is used by the administration as proof the new rules work, but it also comes with a major rise in enforcement actions and detentions inside the country by ICE. For example, White House officials have spoken about targeting thousands of arrests per day, far more than in earlier years. Along with the rise in detentions, there has been a worrying surge in deaths in ICE custody. Between December 12th and 15th, 2025, 4 people from Haiti, Nicaragua, Eritrea, and Bulgaria died while detained by ICE. This pushed the number of deaths in ICE custody in 2025 to the highest level in about 20 years. U.S. officials say some deaths followed. Medical emergencies and others appear to be from natural causes, but they are all under review. Still, the trend has led to more public concern about conditions inside the detention system that Canadians are now more likely to face. Canada has already seen one of its own citizens die in U.S. immigration custody. In June 2025, 49-year-old Canadian Johnny Noviello died while held in a U.S. federal detention center in Florida after being detained by ICE in May. He had a serious criminal record involving racketeering and drug trafficking and had served a prison sentence, but his death still raised questions about medical care and oversight in these facilities. Canada's foreign minister said they were pressing U.S. officials for details and confirmed that about 55 Canadians were in ICE detention at that time. By December, the number of Canadians detained since January had climbed to more than 200. Canadian officials say they know of multiple cases, including children, and they are receiving repeated calls from families who want information and help. But there is only so much they can do once a person is caught up in the U.S. immigration system. Because of these stories, many Canadians are rethinking trips to the U.S. Travel experts note a drop in Canadian travel to America in 2025 as fear and confusion about the new rules grow. Some Americans worry about the economic impact, and lawmakers have proposed the Canadian Snowbird Visa Act, which would extend the maximum visa-free stay for eligible Canadians over age 50 from 180 days to 240 days. The idea is to keep snowbirds coming and spending money. But even if this passes, it will not cancel the biometric system or the 30-day registration rule. Snowbirds would still have to register and give biometrics, and they could still be detained if anything goes wrong. The border, once seen as the friendliest in the world, is now much more tense. Canadians face more questions, more searches, and more risk of detention than they did just a few years ago. Starting December 26th, the United States will track entries and exits more closely than ever before. Every overstay will be recorded and linked to fingerprints and photos. For Canadians who just want a warm winter or a quick shopping trip, this new reality means careful planning and hard choices. One missed rule or document can now lead not just to a ruined vacation, but to handcuffs, cold holding rooms, and weeks or even months in a system that has already held a Canadian toddler for 51 days. What do you think about these new border rules? Are you a Canadian who travels to the US, or are you worried about what might happen on your next trip? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this affects millions of people, and we need to talk about it. If you found this information helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss important updates like this. And if you want to understand what's happening in America right now, click on the video on your screen. About how America is on the brink of a historic collapse. It connects directly to everything we just covered. Thanks for watching, and stay informed out there.